GameWorn Radio is on the air.
Hey! Shelton scores! Up in the Cordova, baby! We're going bowling. Now, let's go on Moose on a Harley. The fires, he scores! L.A. face with an Oakland booty. Scores! Make me a bicycle club. They score! Bowmeister! Pay that man his money!
GameWorn Radio.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening. This is Derek with GameWorn Radio, part of GameWorn.us. I'm joined today with Dan, Doc, Eric, Bert, and Pete, and we're going to be talking about some Stanley Cup Finals jerseys, or at least to start. So to begin, I'd like to tell you guys a little bit about one of the ones that I'm excited about. It's going to actually be my first Stanley Cup Finals jersey that I'm be getting in. It's a 07-08 Nicholas Kronwall red Stanley Cup Finals jersey. So if you guys remember, that's the one where they actually won the cup. So that's pretty special. Unfortunately, they won it in the white one, so that's when they got to lift it for the first time. But definitely the red one, more than happy with. It's going to have some pretty decent repairs and good wear on it. So I'm really excited to get that one. If anybody else wants to chime in.
We'll see if Tampa ever releases any.
This might be the worst year for Stanley Cup Finals jerseys because the Blackhawks are going to harbor them all. Tampa Bay, you can't even get any others. We're not going to see any of them.
You can't get the regular season jerseys.
No.
No, I've been trying for at least a year and a half for a couple of sweaters.
Yeah, I think I've called a few times in the last probably 4 or 5 years asking them the question, when are you going to release jerseys? And emails and trying to find out when they would, if they would ever get rid of them. So yeah, this year.
One hell of a closet they have to put all those in.
Yeah, so this year's Stanley Cup jerseys are going to be awful hard to get a hold of.
It's going to be the missing year.
Yeah, especially the big names, the ones that people would want, you know.
Now, in previous years, some of them have been a little bit more prevalent. I know Migray had a team last year. Who was it?
Yeah,
they do Kings.
They do the Kings. Yeah, they do. They got an exclusive deal with the Kings. So they get the Kings ones every year. They got a couple. They got a deal with like 7 teams, but the Kings the last couple of years.
I mean, this has been the first year they haven't had a team in it, right? I mean, since
Carolina.
Yeah, but that was against
06?
Edmonton. So I mean, they were covered there. Trying to think of what else. I mean, the Ducks won in 07, but that was against Ottawa, so they were covered there. They were still part of the program. I think this is the first year that they haven't had any team in the program, like even in the conference finals from either side. So
yeah, it's definitely pretty crazy. And if you guys remember, last year we wrote an article about the Stanley Cup Finals jerseys on the Rangers jerseys that are handled by Steiner. You can actually see where the cup patch was moved on the shoulder. You can see the shadow outline of where it used to be, and then they had to recenter it.
Yeah, on the blue jerseys, yeah.
Yeah, on the blue ones. I haven't gotten to see one in person or anything, but I could definitely tell while they were skating around out there and stuff. It was pretty funny, actually.
So what Stanley Cup Finals jerseys, other than the Cronwall that you picked up, that are out there? I mean, that you guys have. I mean, I can speak to what I've had and have, but
no blues ones.
No blues.
No blues. Guys. I have a few. So I currently have the 83 Billy Smith. Let me see, the 2010 Jeff Carter, that's on Migray, consigned. And 592 Blackhawks. Both Homan Road, Jeremy Ronix, Stefan Matteau Road, Steve Smith home, and oh Christ, I forgot the other one. Believe it or not, I don't have it in front of me. Mike Peluso. Sorry about that.
Hey, no problem.
That's the extent of my Cup Finals jerseys in there.
I think, hold on 1 second. I'm going to do a quick reset of audio. All right. I think we just got Casey connected. Is that correct?
Yep, I'm here, guys. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing
What's
pretty
up,
good.
Casey?
It sounds like you have quite a few Stanley Cup Finals jerseys.
I don't know about quite a few.
More than one.
Yeah, more than one. I've been fortunate enough to own Mario Lemieux's jerseys from the 1991 and 1992 Stanley Cup Final. Mario owns the black ones from both Cup victories. The first one, obviously, in Minnesota back in '91. That one was on display in the Western Pennsylvania History Museum in downtown Pittsburgh several years back. He had loaned it to the museum to display, and then his 1992 Stanley Cup Finals black road jersey is on display down in his suite, pseudo kind of restaurant area outside where the suite holders go for Suite 66 in the Consol Energy Center. So he owns the black ones, and I own the white ones. So
Now, has that led you
cool.
to get to meet up with him ever?
funny story. I actually talked to him Friday night here in Omaha. For those of you who don't know, I actually live in Omaha, Nebraska, and I'm a big Pittsburgh Penguins fan. And his son Austin was actually drafted by the Omaha Lancers earlier this spring. And Mario was in town to watch his son play, and a lot of people around the arena really didn't recognize who he was. And I knew that he was down there, and I had an opportunity to go down and have a few minutes of conversation with Mario, and it was the first time that I met him. And I'm not into autographs or anything like that, so for me, I really just wanted to express to him the fact that I enjoyed watching him play hockey, that he was my idol growing up, and I've got a little 5-year-old son who plays hockey now as well, and he really inspired that and got me involved in the sport. So my father actually passed away on Wednesday. I played hockey that night, and we started talking a little bit, and turns out his mother had passed away a week previously, so we kind of connected on that level of both recently losing a loved one, and so it was a nice conversation. And so meeting him in person was as special as watching him as a hockey player. So I'll definitely always have that memory of him.
Now, did you tell him that you had those jerseys?
I mentioned it to him that I had a couple of his jerseys from his career, including the Stanley Cup Finals jerseys, and he really kind of how players play it off. And I think Mario, he really valued his sticks. He felt that was what he performed his craft with, and I think that he valued the sticks really more than anything. He had donated one of the finals jerseys, the 1992 finals shirt, to an auction out in California back in August of 2000, a few months before he came back, made his comeback return to raise money for his foundation. So I know that the black ones have significant meaning to him, but I don't think that the white ones had as much meaning. So he acknowledged it and said that was neat, but other than that, we didn't really talk about memorabilia.
That's a pretty interesting take. We got any
Tell the
other SCFs out there?
I'm sorry?
Does anybody else on the panel have any themselves? All right, get in silence. I'm thinking that's a no.
I
I
have,
wish.
yeah, I have nothing like that, or even Pete's Blackhawks. I just have a couple Enforcer final jerseys, and Dave Brown from the '90 finals, and Andre Waugh from the 2004. So, but the funny thing is, I know the Caps still have a couple of theirs from '98, and they just haven't released them. So I don't know what they're waiting on, but
Now, talking about the jerseys, most of us would expect them to have little to no use on them, pending the player. You're looking at Steiner. I think what they have when the Rangers were in it last year, I think it was 4 different jerseys for each player. So 2 games and they switch. Does that sound right?
It's basically one per round. That's like the way they went.
That
Seven
sounds
rounds.
pretty familiar. Now,
Yep.
so the Rangers had about 1 per round. I could have swore there were 2 different sets for the Rangers in the finals. Maybe I'm mistaken. I know it was one year where they wore 4 different jerseys per player in the finals, and I can't remember who that was. Now I know with the Kings last year, since they were a migrate team, you could actually pre-order those jerseys, and they went pretty quick, and the price tags were pretty high. And you
Yeah.
can compare them with the Rangers jerseys. I think, obviously, coming from migrate, they're a little bit more reasonable than what you saw with the Rangers. I can't remember the prices offhand though.
I'm on Migray's site right now, and they've got some of the game issued ones from the Kings. There look like they're sitting around $750 for the issued. And I don't think there's any game worn ones. I think everything left is game issued.
Now it's pretty obvious that as a collector, we're not buying the Stanley Cup final jerseys for the wear. I know everybody wants to talk about wear on the jerseys and things like that, how many repairs, slash marks, and things like that. But when it comes to a Stanley Cup Finals jersey, it's a little bit different of a situation. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so, because you're getting the you're trying to get the cup final jersey. You're not literally looking for wear. You're looking for it's the Stanley Cup jersey.
The historical significance.
Yeah.
Right.
So either it's your favorite player, your favorite team, or maybe you get lucky and it's just the guy that scored the clinching goal of the cup that raised the cup, you know.
Yeah, and I know for me anyway, with the Lemieux jerseys, there are actually 2 of the Lemieux jerseys that I've seen that have shown the most wear, and for me, and Pete, maybe you can kind of comment on this as well, but for me, the Stanley Cup was the ultimate. It's the ultimate from a player perspective, and to me as a fan, that's why I watch, is to hope that my team wins the Stanley Cup. And many people would attest that it's the hardest trophy to win in all of sports, just given the day in, day out rigors of the playoffs. And I know from a vintage standpoint, the jerseys that were worn for the most part embodied that. I had a Kevin Stevens 1991 Stanley Cup Finals home white jersey. This has been probably 8-9 years ago, and it had upwards of 25, 30 repairs on it. And I know that collectors of newer things and they want the moment. They want the Stanley Cup Final shirt with the patch from that round. And to me, that's why I tend to lean towards the vintage shirts. And I think that's the way the hobby has gone in the last 5 to 10 years. Is it's more from a moment perspective, and obviously newer items cater to that, whether or not it's a patch for a banner night or a patch for a memorial, whatever the case may be. But Pete, I was curious to know what your thoughts were. You've been around longer than I have from a collector standpoint, and obviously you've collected the Hawks Finals shirts. But what are your thoughts on the difference and desirability of a '92 Hawks Finals versus one of the more recent? Take away the fact that they won it recently rather than in '92 when they didn't.
Yeah, I think there's some key factors, and there's, for me personally, my dream or desire was to see the Stanley Cup paraded around on the ice at the Chicago Stadium. Unfortunately, the Penguins did that feat not for the Hawks. But getting back, I mean, I understand where you're coming from. You want the elite player from the most elite series or championship series there is, as I was with Roenick. My home white Roenick final has over 100 repairs on it. It was used through the second half, all the way through the finals. They actually did play. They play in one game with a new set, and they lost. And Keenan went back to the second set where they had a great run, and went all the way to the finals on that. Now, the red mate is probably around I don't know, 45, 50 repairs. Significantly less, but we like to collect for that reason alone. I think I feel I know exactly where Casey's at, even though even there's with 2 wins recently and possibly a third. When you don't break out those jerseys, eventually they mean a little less and less as time goes by. I think we lose sight of the fact that you have when you get multiple wins in clusters, or I would say within a 10-year span, there's still a want for them. But again, you're doing it in a new era where there's a lot of new fans, and it's not like the old situations where again, Casey and I we share the same thing. It's his was at the igloo, so to speak, and we were we're at the Chicago Stadium. So I think that there's a lot of different type of collectors in this new era now. There were 3 backups that had recently come out previous year, backups to the backup finals in 13, and they sold at an average of $2,600 a piece.
Wow.
There were regular season shirts with just the patch on it used as backups. So I don't know what anything would come out, anything that was actually used, what value there would be. I had made an offer on a Jonathan Taves jersey that was his backup that he used in the period 3 in Philadelphia in Game 6, and which was at the convention being used as a photo op scenario. So everyone was, pawing it, taking pictures with it. I ran up with an iPad and photo matched it to Game 6 and proceeded to go to the head equipment manager and make a very good offer to them, and was slowly turned down after about a month of going back and forth. So they do have stuff. It's what they're going to do with it, I have no idea.
Now we've got a pretty good question coming in from Stephen Brooks. He's one of the guys that beat me out on a Glendenning this weekend. So if you guys read that story, but he's curious to know, how is everybody obtaining Stanley Cup Finals jerseys? And I'm pretty certain for the case of the Red Wings back in, I think it was 07, 08, they did a raffle in order to purchase one. And somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's how they handled that. I know with my grade teams, you can pre-order them right as soon as they put them online. But some of the other teams, we may not know how they actually got out there.
Yeah, and I think you'll find, I guess I can speak to the case of the Pittsburgh Penguins. In 1991, the players kept the road black that they actually won the cup at the Met Center. In 1992, the white ones slowly made their way into the hobby over a period, I would say, between the early 2000s and mid to late 2000s. So seeing Larry Murphy, Kevin Stevens, Ron Francis, Jaromir Jagr, obviously the Lemieux that I own, quite a few other, Peter Taglianetti, Larry Murphy, I think I might have mentioned him. But those were essentially sold through a dealer at one point, and there were several others that were still in the collection that they had originated from. And then from 1991-92, the second year, with the 3-patch year, those remain with the players, the ones that were worn in the finals, both the home white and the road black. The only one that I've seen is of a road black is in a private collection. It was of Tom Barrasso. And then from a white perspective, as far as I know, I'm the only one who would have one from 1992 in the home white version, and that was put up for auction by Mario himself, again, before his comeback in 2000. So to comment regarding Pete, my collection is centered around the Pittsburgh Penguins Stanley Cup championships. And don't get me wrong, if Sidney Crosby's shirt from '09 came up the home black, I would have no problem with light wear on it. It's really the final piece that I would need for my collection, or want for my collection, I guess. And um, so I really don't discern necessarily. I like more wear, obviously, but to me, it's about the moment and the significance of the moment. He scored a game-winning goal, I believe, in game 3 or 4 of that series, that really kept them in the series, and that to me is special enough to want to add it to my collection, given the first 2 that I own with the Captain C on it and of Mario.
Now, there's certainly a duality to a Stanley Cup Finals jersey, isn't there? You and I can kind of relate on this a little bit with the Red Wings and the Penguins facing off back-to-back in the finals. So for me, 07-08 would be the Cup Finals jerseys that I would want. You would obviously want 08-09. So that's kind of the duality. It'd be cool, I guess, a little bit to have that 08-09 Red Wing one, but it's kind of a bad reminder.
Right, yeah, and that's kind of the thing too. And I was going to ask the group, I don't know who all is on the call, but if you do pre-order, whether or not it's through the team or through an outfit like My Gray before the series, and they don't end up winning, then what? Do you keep it? Because obviously, if they lose, you've paid a premium to a certain extent in hopes that they would win the cup. And obviously, if they don't, then to me, and I'm like you, the desirability for me is much less if they don't end up hoisting the cup. So I was kind of curious what other people's thoughts were on. It's kind of almost a gamble when you go in and pre-order before the series starts, or you don't know the outcome. So I was curious what other people's thoughts were.
Especially for the price that they charge for them.
Absolutely.
No question. What I tried to do is put together, one like a Hawk and a Flyer and a Hawk and a Bruin, but with the Hawks not letting those out, I probably have a better chance at a 92 Pens finals at some point. But that kind of killed it for me. I mean, I just wanted one of each of opposing players or opposing teams against that.
For me, as a Caps collector, since they've only made one Stanley Cup, it doesn't really matter if they got swept. Basically, that a '98 Stanley Cup final jersey for a Caps collector is a pretty exciting thing. And even if it came through my grade that they made it that far, I'd still keep it. It's about the fact that they got that far. Win or lose, obviously winning makes it a little bit more special for you. But I wouldn't be. And I think Dan being a Blues fan, I think Penguins, Red Wings, Blackhawks, Kings, Bruins, they've kind of had the run here recently. So I think there may be a little bit of I don't know, almost spoiled for the fact that they've gotten that far. I mean, I know for a fact that the Caps, the players got once their set, which was the white. The owner actually kept the blue set for himself. Now, I don't know what he was planning on doing with those, but those have slowly trickled out, and I know of probably 5 or 6 that are out. But I mean, literally, there's not much out there.
So what you're saying is, if the Toronto Maple Leafs ever make it to the Stanley Cup Finals again, the world's going to get set on fire.
Right? Yeah. Exactly. I mean, it would be crazy if Montreal. They were close, last year? So imagine if they were to make it to the finals again. So,
Well, I'm a first Pittsburgh Penguin fan, Bert. So, but I like my jersey collection centered not only around the Penguins, but around players I like, and that's why I got the Brian Elliott. I like Brian Elliott. So if the Blues ever went to the Stanley Cup Finals, then I would go after the Elliott Stanley Cup jersey. If I could, get my hands on it. Same with the Penguins. If it was a Penguins guy, it'd be a guy that I like. Wouldn't best say, Casey likes the moment. Like that's what he centers his around. I'd be like, who is the player that I like? what guy do either I like to collect or do I have multiple of his jerseys, you know? So I like guys that I know and I've met, or guys from my home area in Michigan and everything. So that's how I would center mine if I ever had a chance to get a Stanley Cup jersey. Is what's my connection to the guy? Not whereas Casey used the moment, which is that's great if you use the moment. I just use the connection to the person, and that's the way I would go about it, you know. But like you said, some of these teams they don't release them, and sometimes they the ones they win in, like the Penguins, they win their stuff. They keep the black one or they keep the white one that they won it in, and it doesn't become available to the public.
Yeah, Pete, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, probably the mentality about the 1992 Blackhawks shirts prior to the Hawks winning the Cup here recently, that would have been the same approach like Capitals fans have, is that 1992 Stanley Cup shirt was the most desirable, for the most part, from a Hawks perspective, amongst collectors, and they were relatively difficult to come by to a certain extent, until they won the Cup. And then it kind of changes. You focus on the Cups that they won rather than the ones that they didn't.
Yeah, I think you're right. And yeah, if I collected the player that I liked, I actually played on the same youth hockey team with Chris Chelios, and our fathers were from the same area in Greece. So with that connection, I wish I was able to obtain his, but unfortunately, just it's never really surfaced. Originally, they were silent bid at the Blackhawk store, silent seal bid at the Blackhawk store, and I could only really afford the one, so I went for the Ronick, thinking it's going to be cheaper than Chelios or Balfour or anybody else, and nobody had bid on these jerseys, and they were up for sale for $1,500. We're talking over 23 years ago, about 22, 23 years ago, which was a lot of money. But eventually, I pick up what I can. I've been called a hoarder, which is fine by many other of my Blackhawk collectors, but I don't mind that. So
Anybody who collects something is kind of a hoarder, aren't they? At least in large quantities.
I use a few other words like, so I've heard sick, crazy, a few other things, but passionate, that's what makes it unique, and that's what makes it, interesting and fun to do.
Well, and you get the people that are outside of the collecting community that don't quite understand why we want to buy a dirty used jersey from some player that we do or don't know that they wore, and it was probably all nasty. But it's the connection to the sport. I know a lot of us play it. I love playing hockey, but I also love putting on or holding up the jersey of my favorite Blues player, or in my case, with having knowing Mike McKenna and having the opportunity to get some of his gear and his jerseys, is having that connection that I know him and I can watch him play.
Now,
That's what.
who do you guys think's gonna win the cup? In best case scenario, what happens to the jerseys?
Does it really matter? I mean, those jerseys aren't going to be released.
yeah, I think on both teams.
There's
been a little bit of talk. If the Hawks do win, are they really going to pack away even more jerseys, or do they release some of the old ones, keep the newer ones, or do a mix and match type deal? Because they did win again pretty recently.
I think they'll keep them. They kept the last two wins. Players got theirs, and the rest of them are sitting in this closet somewhere that's going to end up in a museum that has been rumored for years. What's your thoughts, Pete?
I think they'll keep whatever is out there. The players definitely will get one. Even player requests for, let's say they want it in whites for the Reds were really not executed by the team. They kind of put them off. But I believe they're going to build a building just where the Jordan statue is, in that parking lot just east of the United Center at some point. And there's already some building and planning that's already been passed. So supposedly they're going to build something, some annex to the United Center. I don't think we're going to see any as collectors. I don't think we're going to see any of those unless you either like get it directly from a player or a player requests and gets something from the team.
Or it gets thrown from a trolley at the parade, like
This is true.
2010.
Yeah.
Explain that. I haven't heard about that one.
Ben Eager is on a trolley during the parade and takes off his red sweater, which it was actually the actual Reds used, and threw it into the crowd. So there's one out there.
Is it in one piece?
God knows.
Did he get in trouble for that or anything?
I don't think there was any trouble per se. I'm sure he was probably had to pay the cost for the sweater. I'm sure they took that out of his paycheck or his bonus, Stanley Cup bonus, but I don't think he cared at that time. And I see most of the players don't really have a connection to the sweaters as much as old, like when we go back, 20, 25 years ago, because they're wearing so many sweaters and they know it, that they're not attached to that, the lucky sweater or anything like that. So I think that they are, again, they're mass produced even by the teams that aren't a migrate type or any other type of marketing entity. And again, I don't think they're that attached to it, but they definitely will be attached to their cup or their ring. I think that is their most prized possession.
It's pretty interesting. Next week we've got Mike McKenna on, and so that might be a good question to ask him, what his general thoughts on other players as far as their jerseys go, if he knows anything or has talked to any of the other players about collecting their jerseys, since he does.
Yeah, and I know when I've talked to him and asked him about it, his biggest complaint, and I think I mentioned it last week, is the fact that a lot of teams, they don't even offer them to the players to buy them before they go out for sale, and they just throw them. The fans get the first shot, and it drives him nuts because he'd love to get his jerseys, and he's gonna pay for them. He doesn't expect them for free, but he would like first crack at least getting them.
Now, it's going to be a really fun and interesting show, so hopefully all of you guys can join us next week.
So Derek, to your point earlier, I think that when you look at the Red Wings string of cups in the late 90s and then early 2000s, and then in 2008 again, I think if you just look at the difference between where that Brett Hull Dallas Stars shirt is at on Classic right now compared to the shirt that he wore when he won the cup with the Red Wings, they're in the same category. One's twice as much as the other one. And I know the goal was very controversial in 1999, but when there are multiple Brett Hulls out there from a Stanley Cup final, it really definitely impacts the desirability and of the shirt, in my opinion. And for Stars collectors, that's got to be the ultimate. I can't imagine a more significant shirt out there than the Brett Hull Stanley Cup game-winning shirt. So
that's a very good point. It'll be curious to see what they end up at, especially as bidding starts to come to a close.
And I personally think, and to go back to the point about shirts not having the same value with players as they did 2 decades ago. I mean that also goes back to juniors and AHL and ECHL. I mean, they have specialty jerseys and they go through jerseys all through their career. So 20, 25 years ago, you wore at home and you were at a road. That was it. Okay, so now that it's kind of been ingrained, and that's just how it is. They get accustomed to that they've been playing for 10, 15 years. And they just go through jerseys, but they'll wear the same T-shirt for 25 years. So
now,
so the other day on NHL Network, they had the 2004 Stanley Cup Final on. The Flames were playing the Lightning, and it was Game 7. Who did any of those Lightning shirts ever hit the market? I don't know that I necessarily recall one, but is the same outfit handling those now as they were back in 04?
That was my gray then.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. Yeah. They've been in and out of my grade for the past couple of years. And
so who are they with now?
No one knows.
Nobody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not Tampa. They hoard them.
Yeah.
I've heard that if you re-up your season tickets, they actually send you a jersey in the mail, and it's just random. I mean, I bought one off a collector, a 20-year patch, Lindbach, off a collector, and that was his source for the situation. So.
Well, you never know, Pete. When you renew your Tampa Bay Lightning season tickets, and so many are flocking down there, you might get a Hawks jersey in the mail. Considering how many they're making the Hawks fans take off.
I don't know if he's going to be allowed to renew.
Too. I'm actually going next weekend, so I'll be in Tampa
cool.
next weekend.
Well, Pete can't renew those tickets because he's got that Chicago credit card.
You know what? My mom's got a home down just a half hour from.
I was going to say, Pete's already thought about that.
Yeah, I've got it. I can just have it sent to her home.
Yeah, but if she bought tickets, she wouldn't be allowed to sit in certain sections with that Hawk sweater. So.
Yeah.
But we saw how effective that is, seeing all the red in the stands.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a try next weekend, though.
Their
You'll have to
marketing
let
is
us
just
know how it
dumb
goes.
shit. If you're, I don't know how much. I'm assuming you guys have all been following that like I have. Just all the PR and stuff that Tampa is doing is really screwing them up. It just makes them look like a shitty team that wants to control everything. And I know it's only a few areas where you can't wear the jerseys, but just how it got out there. And then they were harassing. I don't know if you saw the article. A soldier he's from Tampa, has season tickets, had very low season tickets, and got transferred or is on deployment in another state. And was trying to sell them and stuff, and they basically said, if we catch you selling tickets, we're going to yank your tickets, and you won't get any next year. The press finally got involved, and they've backed off some, but they were being pretty crappy. But I'll have to see if I can find the article. I'll post it out there.
You know, it's so disappointing to see that happen because everybody wants to watch the game. They shouldn't be restricting it or anything like that. I understand they want their own people to come, but it's hard to see.
Like that.
It's just hard to see, you know.
Well, the whole area is like that. They have a hard time drawing for baseball and football too. So it's not anything unusual if the whole area, the whole Tampa area, you know. And they got to understand that it's a lot of transplant people. I mean, that root for fans all over the place. So the most important thing you would think is having people in your seats buying your food and your beer and your memorabilia, watching the game live instead of at home on these big screen TVs. And you want to do something to piss off the fans, really? That's what you want to do?
That's Florida, though. I mean, Miami has the same problems with the Marlins and their football
Jacksonville.
team. Yeah,
Jacksonville.
Yeah. It just seems
Florida's that way. You're right. It's transplants. So embrace it. Just go with it. Roll with what you got, you know?
And you see how Chicago's doing it. They're trying to welcome all the Tampa fans. I don't see many coming, but they're doing the total opposite approach, welcoming them and their money to Chicago.
Yeah. Because because Chicago then approaches it from, we're going to invite you fans up here knowing that they got to come stay in the hotels, eat at the restaurants, you know, so the business around there are like, yeah, bring them. So we can, you know, we can get the money, you know. It's all about the bottom line.
There's fans that go anyway. I mean, they just go just to be around the area. So even if they don't have a ticket, they're in both cities, spending their money and going down there, just wanting to be around there to celebrate.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of the redesign of the Stanley Cup Finals patch? It's a little bit smaller, a little bit sleeker.
That seems to be the NHL's approach to everything, and I think they need to kind of give it up because now the new stuff they're talking about changing goalie gear again. It's like, you know what? Just leave shit alone for a little while and just kind of let things flow and see how they go. I don't get their marketing arm and their rule arm is a pain in the ass, I think, a lot of times.
I personally don't like the smaller patch. I like the bigger ones that with more design and a more stuff that went to it. You know, it's the Stanley Cup. I don't need to see a small little patch.
You like that
Doesn't
big
it
old
seem-
sunburst behind it?
It seems like the newer patches are kind of like the Calder patches. They're pretty close in design. Maybe I'm wrong, but
No, I have to agree on that. They have a similar look. I mean, I know Casey likes his 92 patches because they're actually sewn on a piece of material and sewn over to 75th year patch, which is unique. So,
To be honest, I'm really surprised the NHL doesn't do a new design every single year with the way things are,
Great. You just gave him that idea, Derek. Thanks a lot.
Oh, my bad.
If they're
Any of you
listening to us,
NHL
man,
officials listening, just omit that I said that.
yeah.
They'll have the game number on the patch, so you know which game it was worn.
and
Right.
every year they'll be like 2 ounces lighter to help with the speed of the game too.
yeah.
Next
Well,
thing you
kinda
know,
like
it'll just be a
the
little
pucks.
push pin.
The pucks are all game numbered, right? Nowadays, game 4, game 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. All the special games have, even I was out in Phoenix for when they wore their retro jerseys, and even I got a puck, and that even had the game and had the old logo on it, which was kind of cool. So, I think that's going to that trend too. And actually, I was at a Devils game. I got a warm up puck. My buddy got a warm up puck, and it was from a game puck from like a year before. So it had the Devils like penguins. It was from one of the March 17th where they wear the Christmas tree design. And it was from a warm up game. It was that they wore that. They had that. So they just take pucks and throw them back out there for those things. So.
I'd be curious to know too. Just kind of off the wall, I guess, but my collection focuses around the Penguins Stanley Cup championships, and my ideal collection is one of each of the captain shirts from each one of the Stanley Cup wins, and then a piece of equipment from each one of the wins, the trophy, and then the ring. So I'd be curious to know from the group, what other equipment, has there been any other equipment that's come to the surface from any other teams? You mentioned the 98 caps, and I don't know that you necessarily attribute anything to the finals per se without a patch, but I know the Penguins sold the helmets back in 09. Pete, I don't know if you've seen any equipment from the Hawks, or curious what your thoughts
There's
are.
been a few helmets here and there, but nothing very, very sparse. Geez, I don't even see anything. I did have Ed Belfour's pads from the '92 finals and actually the same All-Star game year at one time, and I ended up doing a deal with another collector to get some other sweaters. But I don't see much of. I mean, sticks. They go through so many sticks. I mean, it's ridiculous.
For Hawk stuff, I know where the sister pair of those Belfour pads are at, and I know where the red and white ones are at. Actually, Glenn Miller still has those, who made them for Eddie. In terms of pants, I had a pair of Huey's pants. He had in the 2010 right in the Sharps pants showed up at the equipment sale, and a collector ended up selling them on eBay a couple of years ago from the 2010 era. 2013 stuff, there's not been really any gear with the exception of the garage sale, and so there might have been some skates or something like that popped up. But yeah, Pete, I mean, really sticks you kind of see out there. Which, speaking of equipment for the Hawks, when they sold the 2010 finals at the convention, and stuff marked and gloves were marked playoff used and finals used, and I got stuff photo matched that from the regular season from Miami, and it said on their playoff and finals used, which the sets of gear did not match the time frame when they wore. So I know if my stuff out there didn't match, that other stuff that they sold was claimed playoff or finals used was wrong as well. So that's just from the 2010 era. So I'd be curious, besides jerseys but gear, how teams mark stuff, whether it's used finals, whether it's used in the playoffs. To me, I would think if you had a set of sticks, the guys are just throwing them in the equipment bags and hauling them from city to city. They're not necessarily pulling stuff out saying, hey, for collectors or for resale later, these were finals, these were used in the playoffs, or first half of the year, the second half of the year. So I think there might be stuff mixed and matched like everything else, with jerseys.
Well, it's funny you should say that because this weekend I have a great example of teams having things that they don't know what they have. The Red Wings had their sale this weekend, and we went, and there were some training camp and preseason jerseys that are left over from previous years, and then the time machine came, and apparently they found some other ones, and some of the ones they found were like Hasek, Shanahan, Lidstrom, either training camp or exhibition jerseys, and they knew that whose they were because of the names on the back of the jerseys. However, there were a few of them that didn't have names on the back, and they had those marked drastically down, and they were sold as is without certificate of authenticity. And one of them was a red 25, and the other one was a 2 white 39 goalie cuts. So I would go ahead and take my shot, got them, come home, and I photo match one of them to Darren McCarty, and I photo match the other two to Hasek. So it's a great example of teams not necessarily knowing what they have.
Yeah, I think it's really a matter of, from a team perspective, who they're working with, and as it pertains to the Pittsburgh Penguins, they deal primarily with Joe Tillman, obviously, and they know that Joe knows what he's looking at. I mean, I know Joe sits in the front row at all their home games, and he's seeing the stuff come on and off the ice each and every night that they're in Pittsburgh. So they recognize that helmets from the Stanley Cup Final, those are going to sell for a premium. The sticks, some of the equipment, that stuff really has a premium, whereas the regular season stuff, that's pretty much what they're going to sell in bulk to Joe, and that's what ends up at the expo out in Pittsburgh with the racks and racks of sticks or pants, etc. So I think it depends on who the team's actually working with too, and how in tune they are with the hobby. And I know, obviously, Detroit's had Hockey Town Authentics for quite some time now, but I don't know that they necessarily care a whole lot when it comes down to that on who wore what. They're just looking to get rid of it at some point.
Part of that I can kind of agree with, but the other side is it really does help to have a little bit of collector perspective in there. Like their goalie bags this year at the Red Wing sale, $300 and $400. Now you go over to the San Jose Sharks and they're like $85 to $125 for empty gear bags. So the ones at the Wings didn't sell at all by any means. And one of the things the Sharks do is actually do talk to the collectors and kind of gauge them. I know a couple collectors that are actually working with them a little bit out there that they have a really good relationship with them. So it's a little bit of the difference that you see there, and I think some of that can translate into the pricing of items and distribution, especially of things like Stanley Cup Finals jerseys, which unfortunately we don't see with the Blackhawks.
Yeah, I think the Blackhawk trainers are definitely afraid of talking and don't talking to collectors, especially like a collector myself, and I'm looking for as many as I could possibly grab. But again, they feel that they don't want to put their livelihood in jeopardy, and it's not like I'm trying to do a backdoor deal like the old days. But all I want is to be heard, hear my offer, and accept it, deny it. When I made the offer on the tapes, it took me 5 weeks to get an answer. And I was just like, you don't know? I mean, you've got a nice hefty offer in front of you, and you don't know if you want to sell or not? You're selling
Pete,
everything else.
Pete, let me ask you this. I'm curious to know, give me a range. What was the starting point in the final offer on the Taves? Obviously, it's been retained, but I'd be curious to know,
I'll tell you,
as a Hawks collector, what the value was.
At the convention, it was I offered $15,000, and then last year I upped it to $25,000, and I was turned down.
5,000.
Yep.
I know Sidney Crosby's back in 2009. I know obviously their careers have kind of run parallel a little bit, and some could argue that Jonathan Taves has had a better career. He's got more Stanley Cups, obviously, and he's the captain of a prominent team. But I know Sidney Crosby sold for $40,000 back in 2009. And to be quite honest, if it came up again, I would have no problem putting it down in a heartbeat to finish my Stanley Cup captain's collection of the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah, I can't blame you there. I mean, but regular season one Taves that were auctioned at convention were selling right around $4,000 to $5,500.
Sure.
But last year they decided not to offer any at all. So.
And they're trying to sell them for 10.
Right.
Yeah, they're trying to sell them on the forums for 10. His rookie ones were selling for 10. Correct me if I'm wrong, Pete, from the store.
Yep.
And then Kaner's were, what were
10.
they? 8 or they were 10? I thought they were
10 as well.
Yeah. So, and in mine, like 2010, they held onto the alts. Correct me if I'm wrong on that
They
too.
did.
So they're sitting on the alts and the cup jerseys. In 2010, you only saw the Helsinki's come out. So, and a few odds and ends in the grab bags and stuff like that. But really, there's not a lot of 2010s out there even, really.
Now, bringing it back to the teams not knowing what they have in your $25,000 offer, that came on the jersey that they were showcasing that was played in a period that you got photo matched, right?
Yes, I end up photo matching that. I had an iPad filled with about 1,000 pictures from the finals, and just happened to be a picture of Leighton, Taves, and Timonen in the same photo.
Now, Pete, was that at the that was at the convention, like the little photo op, like a mock locker room? Is it?
Yes,
that one?
That's correct.
Okay. So at that convention, they not only had that, they had various helmet and gear, the gloves and helmet that Kane threw off when he knew he won it. People were putting that on, taking pictures with it. They had stuff like they have like a mock patient room, kind of like you see at the other fan fests. They had, I don't know, I would hear 4 other legit cup jerseys along with some authentics in the mock room. They were putting on and off a Taves helmet in the Comcast photo booth. That year, there was a bunch of crazy stuff out there. They didn't know what was just in a bin with a Hawk sticker on it in terms of a helmet for photo ops versus the legit, real deal stuff. So I think after you notified them, I heard a couple other collectors bringing it up, and the equipment guys, and they pulled it out of the photo op areas. So it just kind of goes back to, I think, just kind of they pulled stuff out, and here's what we can use for photo op stuff, and not really knowing at the time.
I think that plays a really good importance on something that we can touch on in another episode in the future, which would be the importance of photo matching. And we can't always trust exactly what we get, even when we get it from the source. I've had experiences with that I'm sure we can talk about on that episode. But photo matching is extremely important, especially on high importance jerseys such as Stanley Cup Finals jerseys. And I'm sure you guys would agree.
I agree on that.
Oh, by far.
Yeah,
On
definitely,
high-end
makes a
jerseys?
surprise.
So we'll definitely make sure we get an episode to talk about photo matching techniques, things like that. I think, Pete, your experience would be really great to talk about. I know I've got a couple experiences that I could talk about. So we'll definitely make sure we get that down in the docket for a future show. Does anybody have any final thoughts on Stanley Cup Finals jerseys as we run down to our final 4 minutes?
I'd say Pete's got to let us know if he comes up with anything in Tampa. As if they're
I've put some offers in and into higher end of the food chain in Tampa. So I don't know if they're gonna listen or not. I doubt it. I threw them out there, figuring if I'm figuring that I'd never get called. But if I get called, I mean, obviously you guys will be the first to know. We'll break it right here.
I would love the scoop on that. I think that might be the biggest news that we've had in quite some time, because we've not seen Tampa Bay jerseys in general hitting the market in the last 5 years.
So place your orders right now. So I'll take and get the goalie who came in for 2 minutes because of the supposed
Vasilevsky?
the Bishop diarrhea incident, or the supposed rumor. So put me down for that guy.
I'm kicking myself for not picking up his Crunch jersey.
Yeah, he had Crunch jerseys out there.
Yeah. You'll be able to find
Well, Pete,
those,
I think you should go wearing a full-size Indian headdress and see how you fare down in Tampa, being a Hawks fan, rather than wearing a jersey. I think you should go headdress.
Just go headdress. I mean,
Definitely.
it's a hat, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I got a buddy of mine's got a headdress, and he'll probably let me borrow it.
Just drape it over the back of your seat into the lap of the person behind you.
That'd be good.
You're gonna be there for what? Game 5, right?
Yeah, I'm going tomorrow night as well. So, and hopefully they close out Saturday.
Now, for those of you who are Hawks fans, I know in Classic there's the ring, the trophy. I think a Campbell Conference trophy as well. How desirable are those amongst Hawks fans and collectors in that area?
Yeah, I think the video coach. I mean, that's who they are. It's the first ones that are out. It's not the first ring that's out. There was somebody that did that's no longer with the team that did sell their ring, but in private sale. But it's definitely the first that's publicly out for anybody to have at. If it was a player, I think the values would be much higher, even if it was a lower end guy. But you have to be the first. This is, again, you have to be the first player to let go of something like that. After that, they kind of cap everything for the rest of the players, except for let's say, the top 6 players on the team.
Awesome. Well, guys, we're getting down on time, so I want to thank you guys for joining us this week. I had a lot of fun on this episode. Don't forget, next week we're going to have Mike McKenna on. I think we're slated for a half hour with him. Is that right, Doc?
Yep, that's about right.
Cool. We'll go ahead and try and think of some stuff that we want to ask him. And if anybody has any questions for Mike McKenna, feel free to submit it in our forums or on our Facebook page, and we'll try and make sure if we have enough time, we'll go ahead and get those questions answered or asked to Mike and answered. So does anybody have any final thoughts? 30 seconds. Seeing none. Thanks again, guys, for joining me. Yeah, I didn't give you any time on that. I'm sorry. But it was funny. But yeah, as
Hawks,
always,
of course.
Enjoy having you.
Go home, Hawks.
Yeah, go home, Hawks.
Killing me. Now I'm
All right.
playing the Blues.
Thank you very much, guys, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
guys.